In this session, we're actually in a meetings room in one of my offices. And we're here for a special reason, and that's because in this room there are some very important things that I want to share with you and show you that are significant in the development of Think Leicestershire. The most important thing is a little bit unusual, is actually a coffee table. And you might be thinking to yourself, Andy, why on earth do you want to show us a coffee table? Well, the reason is that this is a special coffee table, and I'll tell you what, we'll come on to that in just a minute. Before I do that, I just want to share with you a very special picture. And this is a pen and ink drawing that was actually done by a coach of mine when I set up my very first business back in 1997. And with my coach, who was called Tim, I said to him one day, Tim, I've set up a business. I think I need a mission statement and a vision statement. And he said to me, Andy, why don't you have a passion statement instead? And I said, fantastic. What's a passion statement? He goes, I don't know, I just made it up. But you seem a very passionate guy. So I said, well, how do we write one then? And he said, well, why don't you just write down everything that you're passionate about? So I did. And it's that is inscribed on the coffee table. Now, before we get to the coffee table, I mentioned that Tim was my coach. The thing about Tim that made him different as a coach, and all coaches are different, was that Tim actually used to draw as I was speaking. So he used to draw my answers. And at the end of each coaching session he did with me, he used to present me with a bit of artwork. And this picture here is a pen and ink drawing of the Go Mad framework with about 100 different stories and images all around it that he spent a couple of hours just drawing freehand for me. And so that's got a special place here. Right, let's get onto the coffee table. So let's go down, have a look at the coffee table here. And you'll notice there's loads of words. Don't worry if you can't see them too well. I just want to point out a few to you. At the start it says here, being the brightness is one step beyond seeing the light. And what that's really about is about being a role model. And not just going, aha, I know what to do, but you're actually practicing what you preach. And all over here, there's about 90 words or so. I'll just pick out a few. To be passionate about opening minds, igniting desires, stimulating ideas, creating breakthroughs, releasing potential, enjoying learning, facilitating success, overcoming obstacles. And then right at the end it's got, and making a difference. The answers are on the inside. And then it says the passion statement. So that whole thing about making a difference is really important, because that's where I first articulated that one of the things that I was really passionate about was making a difference. So if you now fast forward a year, I'm now working in Merseyside on a change project for a client, and I'm in a Chinese restaurant with one of my team. And this person, Kath, says to me, you know, on the passion statement, it says about making a difference. Well, what do you think the essence of making a difference really is? And we philosophised, enjoyed a nice Chinese meal and a bottle of red wine, and we agreed that actually we didn't know, so we better research it. And that was the point where I realised that I really wanted to look into this whole phenomena of what making a difference was about. So then we put a research team together. There was 8 people in that team, and we spent the best part of 14 months going out and interviewing people. We spent over 4,000 hours, right, doing desk research, filming people, audio interviewing people. There was a great big pile of notes, and at the end of it, my job as the analyst was to look through this and figure out what is the simplest possible way of explaining how all this works. And we had a question in mind, and the question was this: what is the simplest way of explaining the success process that people naturally use when making a difference? Now, looking back, that was a poorly phrased question, because we didn't find a process. A process is when you go A, then B, then C and D and you get an output. What we actually discovered is what we now know as 7 key principles for making a difference. So those 7 key principles fitted together in a framework. So what we actually had was a framework for making a difference, comprised of 7 key things in a very simplified format, with links between them. And it's the relationship between those links that are equally as important as the 7 key principles. So that was back in 1998, 1999. I then wrote the first Go Mad book, The Art of Making a Difference. And in this book, this was just explaining those 7 key principles. This book became very successful. A couple of 100,000 of those were printed, used around the world. And Go Mad really took off as a development framework for managers and people in large organisations. In the year 2000, I was then invited by a very large insurance company to train 200 coaches around the world. So I wrote the next book in the series, Go Mad About Coaching. This was rather than writing a load of handouts for the programme. And this became a very popular book on coaching. Subsequently to that, we've written over 20 books. We've made over 200 audios, video programmes. Go Mad as a methodology has been used in over 40 countries by hundreds of thousands of people in large and small organisations. So how did Think Leicestershire come about? Well, going back to 2008, I was nominated to be Entrepreneur of the Year for Leicestershire. And the judges came out and they were in this very room, sitting in some nice Chesterfield chairs that you can't see at the moment, sitting there, and they were interviewing me for a couple of hours about the entry form that had been submitted. And one of the questions that they asked me was, what is your 5-year plan, Andy? And at that moment I realised I wasn't going to win Entrepreneur of the Year that year, because actually I only had an 18-month plan. So the next year came by and it's now 1999, and the judges come out again, different judges, and I'm anticipating the question that they're going to ask me something about what's my 5-year vision. And by this time I've done a lot of thinking about it, and at the time I was 45 and I was thinking, 5 years, that would take me to 50. What would my vision be? And I realised that actually I wanted a 55-year vision till the time that I'm 100. What did I want to spend the rest of my life doing? Bearing in mind the passion statement, I'm passionate about the work I do, helping make a difference. My thinking was really, how could we help introduce a results or solution-focused way of thinking into every house, every business and every community? In order to do that, I couldn't have a training consultancy. I needed to set up a technology, a software business. So as part of my 5-year vision, it was setting up a software business. Right, let's go back to that 5-year vision then. I then said, right, in that 5-year vision, right, by the time May 2013 comes around, I want to have developed something for the people of Leicestershire. I want to give my intellectual property back so that people could use it in the community. And that's really how Think Leicestershire came about. So, it's been in the planning for a few years, and I realised I needed some strategic partners. I also needed to build a team. One of the key principles here, involving others, means you don't have to do everything yourself. So I thought about an infrastructure. How could we help the people of Leicester and Leicestershire to learn about the Go Mad framework, but not in an academic way? How could they get the benefits from it? So I decided to set up an infrastructure of a leadership team of 50 people, district coordinators, and then having 40 thinking action group leaders. And in each of those thinking action groups, there would build up to be 25 community coaches that we would train. And that's essentially why you're watching this video and you're part of the Think Leicestershire team. My role is not to make all the decisions about how Think Leicestershire works, it's to involve you so it gets a life of its own from the people that live and work in Leicestershire, that are giving their time as volunteer community coaches to help thousands, tens of thousands and hopefully hundreds of thousands of people in Leicestershire to think in a more effective way, to take better action, and then to achieve better results. Hopefully that just gives you a bit of a background, hearing it from me, a bit about the research of Go Mad, where it's come from, and how actually Think Leicestershire was actually formed. So I really thank you for getting involved in Think Leicestershire, and what I want to do is give my time and my skills and my knowledge to help you so that you can help the thousands of people within Think Leicestershire really make a difference.